Can the Nashville Predators get back to contention this season? We're going to be answering that and some other big Predators questions on today's episode.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Mailbag Monday, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off our Monday episode shouting out our Locked On Predators insiders and our everydayers who are tuning in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio and Friends. I have a partner in crime.
You do. I am Emma Lingan, and I'm an NHL reporter and host with the Hockey News.
Emma, we reached out to our amazing Locked On Predators insider community, and they responded. It is Mailbag Monday. That's, spoiler alert, probably going to turn into Mailbag Wednesday as well because we got so many great questions. We are going to tackle some of our insiders' biggest questions about the Nashville Predators. And friends, we are starting off on the deep end, talking about, can the Predators team be a contender? We're also going to wrestle with the future of one of Emma's favorite defensemen. Where's Justin Barron going to play this season? Lots to get to. But before we dive into those questions, we do want to let you know today's episode's brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right, Emma, great questions from our Locked On Predators insiders, of course. Always get great questions, great conversations with our insiders. But, you know, as I look at the plethora of topics to cover, I'm like, let's just dive right into the deep end of the pool. So we're just throwing ourselves in the deep end of the pool, and we're going to see if we can swim with this first question. Barry Trotz has said his goal for the upcoming season is to be in the hunt or in the mix for a playoff spot. How realistic is that? So yeah, see, we're just going right for it. We're not warming up or anything, Emma. And I think it's interesting. This question came up. There's also an article that came out recently in The Athletic kind of talking about predictions for next season. Not a lot of positive projections for the Nashville Predators when it comes to the postseason, when it comes to getting back in the mix. So the big picture media does not seem dazzled by what Nashville is going to bring to the table in this next season, Emma. I would say this team can and should be better. But after last season, who are we to say if they will be any better? That's where it is. Like, you can look at it on paper. You can look at the offseason moves. But if we learned anything last season, it was A, how to age like a president, and B, whatever is on paper does not always translate to the ice. So are they going to get back to contention this coming season?
I'm kind of with you. Can they? Yes. I mean, can they win? And we're talking about contention. We're not saying Stanley Cup contention, just to be clear. We're talking about like second wild card spot contention is kind of where I'm at with this at this point.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think that should be the expectation. I mean, It's great. It would be great if that happens, but let's, if anything taught, if we learned anything last year other than how to age like a president and that hockey is not played on paper, it's that it's best to set your expectations low so you won't be disappointed. But yeah, like we've talked about many times before, so I don't want to harp on it too much, but basically, we have every reason to believe that last year was the outlier. And I'm not saying it definitely is, but I think this season we will learn a lot about that because like we have enough years, enough evidence showing us that last year should not have played out the way that it did. So we're hoping that that's, a fluke and not the start of something real bad.
Disastrous. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that, can they be? Yeah. Will they be? I don't know.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Coming up later in this week, we have an episode coming out with JD Young, and he and I were chatting before that episode and talking about the Nashville Predators. And JD's like, here is the thing about Nashville. If you told me they are a playoff team next season, I would say, okay, yeah, I can see that. If you tell me that they are one of the worst teams in the league and they get a top 5 pick in the next draft, I would say, yeah, okay, I can see that.
It's the ultimate sure.
Sure.
That's where I'm at with this team
Yeah.
now. It's like, okay.
It's you look at the law of averages and you think surely so many things went wrong last season that it can't possibly repeat itself. And you think of, the number of players who struggled offensively. Just the law of averages says some of those players are going to bounce back. You look at the injuries on defense, Willsby, Lazon, Roman Josi. You think, okay, they can't possibly drop like flies again, just based on the law of averages. You look at things like bad bounces. We talked last week or the week before about the number of posts that Nashville hit over the course of the season. And you think the law of averages is that some of those things are just going to self-correct. And if a few of those things self-correct, this is a little bit different looking Nashville Predators team. I also think that Nashville is doing the work to try to correct what they have control over. I don't know that they've done enough, but at least it makes me think they're aware. They went out, like we've talked recently about the additions on the blue line. Okay, they're aware that they didn't have what they needed on the blue line, and they went out to try to get, Nick Perbix, Nick Hague, and give them an opportunity to take the next step here. Now, you can't guarantee that those two players are going to step into a bigger role and have success immediately, but at least it's reassuring that you're like, okay, Nashville knows that they didn't have that. Nashville knows that they need better from some of these younger players. Okay, is Andrew Brunette going to be able to get that out of the younger players? So there is reassurance in the fact that you feel like the team is aware of the things that they have to correct, that are in their control to fix. I don't know that I have the confidence to say they have done everything they possibly can to correct everything. Like Dr. Phil always says, the first step to fixing a problem is admitting it. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. And I'm like, Nashville has acknowledged this offseason that here are some problems that we know we have. But I'm like, I love that you acknowledged it. I'm not sure that you've done enough to change it. And that makes me nervous.
Yes, and I agree, and I will play devil's advocate, but I don't know what's the opposite, like angel's advocate, where it's like I'll try to look on the positive potentially.
I love this for you. I love this for you.
Very off brand for me, so just go with it here. I think I agree that there's the tendency to want to think, well, did they really do enough? Like, great that you acknowledge it, but did they do enough?
Mm-hmm.
I think a potential positive could be looking at this and again acknowledging that this roster should not have been as bad as it was last year. But you look at it and you think, okay, we don't want to go into panic mode and overcorrect. So
Yes.
because we do want to, give them a chance, give them a chance to prove that last year was the outlier. They did acknowledge the things that, like, the most pressing things they needed to fix, being the defense specifically. Now, they still don't have a superstar center. They lost Colton Sissons, so they lost some of that depth down the middle. So that's still a concern, yes, but it's not, I don't think, they didn't completely panic and overcorrect after one bad season, which I think could be a good thing because we saw what happened when there were these like massive changes. It did not go well. So it's like,
go well.
let's not do another year in a row of that. If one of the biggest problems was chemistry, let's maybe not do too much to upset the chemistry of this group here. So Angels advocate, I think that this may be a good thing.
Yeah.
Or could be a good thing.
And I think that may pan out better for the Predators, because I think it shows Barry Trotz is getting more comfortable in this role, because the hardest thing to do is find that sweet spot of acknowledging what is in your control to change and acknowledging what just maybe isn't, the kind of that law of averages versus what you can control. And you need Barry Trotz to hit that right. And I'm not sure we've seen him hit that right during the season last year. So I'm going to lean Angels advocate with you, and maybe showing some, tear it down, burn it down, set everybody on fire, all that kind of stuff. Maybe it will pan out. I don't know, friends. I don't know, friends. Like,
We can only hope at this point.
We can only
really can do.
Hope. Yeah. Now, there are 3 things that need to happen for Nashville to seriously get back into the contention conversation. We're going to talk about what those are coming up. Today's episode's brought to you by our great friends at Indeed. You just realized that your business needs to hire someone like yesterday. How are you going to find the amazing candidate you need fast? It's very easy. All you need is Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other websites. Indeed's sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page, and it's going to help you reach the right candidates faster. If your business is in that spot where you need the right hire, the pressure is on, and every day without the right person is a setback, that is exactly when Indeed's sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Right now, you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. All right, Emma, we are wrestling with the existential question of, can the Nashville Predators get back into contention? And I think if they are, obviously a lot of things need to go differently. But here are 3 things that I think have to happen. First of all, I think players like Zach LaRue, Luke Evangelista, Fedor Svechkov have got to take steps forward. You have to see exponential growth and improvement statistically and in playmaking from those players. The second thing is UC Saros needs to be good. And the third thing is I think Stamkos, Forsberg, Marchessault, and Josi have to be great. And that's a big ask, but I do think it is possible to see improvement from the youth and to see Saros get back to being UC Saros in net. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later as well. But you're going to need to see these veterans get back to being great players. And that's the one I'm a little bit more nervous about than the other 2.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I'm less nervous about Filip Forsberg, to be honest.
Very true.
I think
I'll give you
he'll be,
that.
yeah, I think he'll be fine. I am more worried about Josi more from a health perspective. Because again, this is a player who this team, I mean, obviously not last year because he was injured for so much of the year, but in the past, this is a player that this team has relied upon to kind of put the team on his back. And we saw what happened when he wasn't around to do that. There's so much that he does offensively and defensively, and that, the team has relied upon him for this so much. And I mean, that's great. He's of course just an elite player, but I think, you need to be a little bit realistic now with where his health is at, and knowing that even if he is healthy to start the season, and that's all well and good, you still want to maybe, be in a position where you don't have to throw him out there in every single situation, and you trust the rest of your defense, to kind of pick up some of the slack there so that you can, protect his long-term health and just his longevity for the rest of the team.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Josi, I think, is going to be really key. The other thing I will say when I look at these veterans, and this is a podcast, an entire podcast for another day, but I'm just going to throw it out there. I look at, Stamkos and Marchessault, as those big free agent signings from last season. And I think it feels like if they don't get it, if they don't settle in and kind of get back to where we expect them to be, I don't know that there's anything they can do the following season to make this not feel like a failure. And I know that 2 seasons is a short period of time to say, hey, you know what? This signing was an absolute disaster. But I do think that this season is critical for Barry Trotz, for his idea of like, hey, we can add these amazing pieces and retool on the fly. And I feel like, listen, Stamkos, Marchessault, like it's got to click this season. And I'm not saying that is all on them. I'm not saying that is all up to them. I think there is, personnel issues. I think, coaching issues and coaching decisions play into that. But it feels like this is a really important year, not just for Stamkos and Marchessault, but for Barry Trotz. If he is still going to try to sell the now and not yet, if it doesn't happen this season, I really don't know that anybody is going to believe there is a now if Stamkos and Marchessault don't hit it.
For sure. And like you said, it's not all on them, but it's a cliche for a reason. We say it all the time. You need your best players to be your best players. Well, those guys were brought in to be 2 of their best players, and they are key to their being a now. Like if there is going to be a now, those guys have to be on it, and I think that I agree. There's no way for this to not look like a failure for Barry Trotz if they don't get back to that level this year. And you said 2 years doesn't sound like a lot of time. It does when you only have Stamkos for 4. Like,
yeah,
it's, we can essentially call this past year, a wash, a waste. I mean, not a waste, but it is a waste. I mean, like, I just think that now you have to be honest and look at, like, if you're trying to sell people, whether it's you're trying to sell the players themselves on this, or you're trying to sell the fans on this idea that, we're not just here to buy time until the young kids get here. We're here to be competitive in the meantime. If you're going to sell that, then those guys have to be better this year. And again, that's not all on them. It's, and I know you're not saying this either. We're not saying like, well, the reason that they were so bad last year was because Stamkos and Marchessault were bad. That's not what we're saying.
No.
They actually weren't. They actually weren't that bad. But it was just like all of the factors have to align here for this team to improve.
Yeah. And none of that is going to happen in a vacuum. And we have talked about this. You look at this Central Division. Emma, I was thinking about this as I was prepping for this episode, and I'm like trying to think of what team in the Central Division got worse this offseason. And I don't know that there's a team that did something that got dramatically worse. I'm not sure Chicago did a ton to like exponentially improve, but pretty much every other team is a potential contender or did something to get themselves in that conversation, with the exception of Chicago. Bless.
Chicago didn't get better, but I also don't think they got worse this offseason. The one thing you could say where they got worse is that, but this was before the offseason, is that they traded away Seth Jones, and now their defense is a little sus. And so, and they didn't do anything on the defense to improve it. And now, you've got a lot of people, myself included, if I'm being honest, putting on our tinfoil hats and saying, ooh, is this a tank for Gavin McKenna situation happening in Chicago right now? So that's, again, they could just be kind of playing the long game and lying in wait. And we all know, Chicago knows, they're not trying to contend for the division title this year. But of all the rest of the teams, I mean, I think, Minnesota, St. Louis, Colorado again didn't do much either, but they didn't really have to, I don't think.
Right.
It's definitely not going to be any easier in the Central this year.
Yeah. And Nashville is going to need to rely on their players to be better than they were. It's not even so much going out and saying, we've got to get more of this. Now, they did go out and get some, defensive players, which they needed to do, but they just all have to perform better, top of the lineup to the bottom of the lineup. And it's a tough Central Division when lots of other teams did not take a step back. So, it's going to be interesting to see how much better Nashville can be, but they're not going to be in a vacuum. So it's very hard to predict. Could they be in contention in the Central Division? Could they get a playoff spot? I can see a scenario where, yes, they do. I don't see a scenario where they make a deep postseason run unless there are some moves at the deadline that, shore up some weak spots. But again, I can also see where Nashville is going to miss the playoffs or, miss the postseason and struggle in the Central Division as well. This is so tricky. And I really do think the first month or two of the season is going to tell us a lot. Hopefully it's not going to say the same thing that the last season's first couple months were, because what a poop show, friends. I don't know if you can remember that far back, but it was a poop show. It was real bad. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. Coming up, we have a question about the defense. Is there a spot for Justin Barron to grow his game? We're going to wrestle with that coming up. Today's episode is brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you are all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You are already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game. You can use FanDuel to track your favorite matchups, and the app is going to keep it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and it makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. If you're new to FanDuel, it's a great time to check out the action. New customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Emma, got a question from one of our insiders. Here it is. Take a deep breath. Would you be surprised to see Justin Barron improve and maybe solidify his status on this team, because we now have added 2 more defensively sound physical presences? And this is a part of such a conversation. And we talked a lot about the additions of the Knicks last week, and defensively what that means. But it also then opens up a whole conversation about a whole lot of defensemen that Nashville has to sort through. But let's stick with Justin Barron.
I mean, well, first of all, I don't know. I don't know fully what the question means as far as like solidify his status on the defense. I mean, he's there. He's on the team. He's on the defense.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I know we've talked about how there's this sort of log jam of defensemen, and you've got like 7 different dudes who could play on the third pairing,
Mm-hmm.
but that's 7 different dudes who could play with Justin Barron, because Justin Barron, again, have right-handed shot, will travel. I mean, that is just how it is in the NHL right now. So he's a right shot defenseman. He's going to be a starter on this team.
Mm-hmm.
Again, should be on the third pairing. I think that's a good spot for him. As far as seeing his game grow, again, not fully sure what the question is asking. Like, do we think, are we going to see more from him offensively? Quite frankly, I hope not, because I'd rather he focus on getting a little more sound defensively. And I don't want him to fall into the trap of having all these extra safety nets around him to where he does not shore up the defensive side of his game. That said, I think we saw him improve slightly down the final stretch last year. We saw him make some strides there. So again, I don't know if I'm answering the question because maybe I don't fully understand what the question is. He's going to be a starter on the defense. I think he's going to be on the third pairing because he's got that right-handed shot. And as far as his game, it's pretty one-dimensional right now. And that one dimension is very exciting offensively, but he had been, again, noting the minor improvements he made down the stretch, he is a defensive liability at this point. And I understand the idea of, scoring goals is more fun and you want to surround him with more of a cushion to where he maybe, like, he can still be a liability, but it won't be as big of a deal, which is like, I get that. But at the same time, I'd rather he work on not being a defensive liability personally. But
yeah. I do think the third pairing defensive situation is going to be interesting. I also think it is potentially going to change over the course of the season. I'm with you. A right shot defenseman, it's like a 4-leaf clover on this roster right now. So
in the league right now.
Yeah.
They're very hard to come by.
Very hard to come by. And so, I do think Justin Barron, is going to make the lineup. I also think he is a player, for whatever reason, that the Predators feel like is a good project. And there's a couple of these defensemen that I think that Nashville look at as, this is a diamond in the rough, and we can do something to fill out, like you say, another part of their game, while still capitalizing on what they bring. And I think, like you say, for Justin Barron, I think the fill out is more defensive responsibility, while also, hey, be great if he could score some goals sometimes. Another one that I think falls in that category is Adam Wilsby. And we just didn't see enough of him, but I think that Nashville likes what they saw from Wilsby. And he strikes me as one of those project defensemen for the Predators, where they may want to give him some more time. Wilsby is an interesting one for me because defensively, I thought he was good. I thought he was fine. But every so often there was an offensive moment from Wilsby that you were like, I'm sorry, what? So I don't know that you're going to want to Barron and Wilsby it all together. I don't think you're going to want to put two projects together. And like I said, I can see the defense looking very different in December, January than it looks in October, not because of injury, heaven help us, hopefully, but because I do think that there is going to be serious consideration, depending on how the defense does, for a Molendyk potential Andrew Gibson kind of moment this season. And again, I think a lot will have to happen to open that door, whether it's early in the season, late in the season, whatever, it'll depend on how everything's working defensively. But there are a lot of options. I just think Nashville has some pet projects on the blue line. And I think Justin Barron is one at the top of their list for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a project. And I understand, again, like, if you're not just the Predators, if you're any NHL team or evaluator, you look and you see the basics here. I mean, he's big, he's right-handed, he's a good skater, and he has offensive upside. So of course, that's all appealing. That's all great. And you're like, oh, maybe if we can just massage this into something, that's going to work for us. Yes, I think that's fine. Now, again, I'm more comfortable with him on the third pairing than I am with him in a top 4 role, at least for right now. And I agree with you about the third pairing too. I think Wilsby is a guy that this organization is very, very high on. Obviously, they signed him to that contract extension already. It is unfortunate that we didn't get to see more of him
know.
last year because he did get injured. So I'm looking forward to a full healthy season from him. But I think we have to assume that he is sort of the heir apparent to that other spot on the third pairing. Remember
Mhm.
too, you've also got Andreas Englund who's signed
Yes.
for 1 year.
Yep.
So to me, I think that's your seventh defenseman right there. But
Mhm.
he's a guy who maybe, depending on what your matchup looks like, if you need a little bit more size, a little bit more muscle, that's when you swap out a Willsby for an England, for example, on the third
Mhm.
pairing. And I think you're in a good spot there. So and again, any of these guys, well, not Willsby, but like England, Barron, even, if they're just not working out by the deadline, you trade them.
You
I
can move
mean,
them.
yeah. So I like, again, I'm not super concerned about it. Which is why, again, like to me, that was kind of the saving grace of the Baron Carrier trade last year. Is like, well, at least you're not locked into something super long term if it doesn't work out. So you still have a little bit of that flexibility there.
Yeah. The defense is going to be so important, and it makes me nervous, Emma, because I think you need to get it pretty close to right to kick off the season. And that gives you very short runway in training camp when you're adding two brand new potential top four defensemen. You've got Josi coming back from injury. You're hoping Brady Shea is going to pick up where he left off because he was heading in the right direction. So you're really hoping that that happens. And then, you're adding Willsby, who hasn't played for a while. You're hoping to see something more potentially from Justin Barron, but you also have to consider Tanner Mollendijk. I do think Andrew Gibson is like maybe the one that people aren't talking. I just think he is going to be somebody to watch in training camp. But whatever you do, you really want to get it right out of the gate. And I'm nervous about that. I think training camp is going to be, we talk about the forward lines and who is going to play with Svechkov and him stepping up into that 2C role and all of that. I am more concerned about getting all the information you can get in training camp and getting the defense right out of the gate, because that is going to be the hitch and the giddy up for the Predators, who have to have a good start. They have to have it.
Yeah. And we've talked about that. I mean, in any other year, I think we'd be fine. Even last year, we were fine. I think, well, maybe not everyone was fine, but you and I, Ann, were fine by,
We were fine.
We were fine when it was, 0-5 to start the year, because it was like, okay, we saw this coming. Like, this might be a little bit of an adjustment period. Little did we know that adjustment period would go on to last 84 years, but
Mm,
at the time, we were a little bit more amenable to having that, maybe a slower start. This year,
can't.
can't have that.
Cannot have it. No. There are more questions in our mailbag, so we're extending our Monday mailbag to Wednesday mailbag as well. Remember, we are down to 3 episodes a week in the off season, but that does not mean we don't have plenty to talk about on Wednesday's episode. We are going to talk about that start and how it will impact the goaltending situation. We're also going to take a look back at the John Hines era. Did the Predators do him dirty? Oh, that's going to be one we're going to want to wrestle with on Wednesday. Before we log off on this Monday, though, Emma, will you let everyone know where they can find you and your work?
Yes, you can find me on social media at Emma_Lingan, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio. You can find me on social media at ANK_Mama on Ice. You can, of course, find the podcast at LO_Predators, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And of course, we are on YouTube. That's going to do it for this part 1 of our Monday mailbag episode. We will be back on Wednesday to answer some more questions about the Nashville Predators moving forward. We'll see you then.